This has to be one of the most incredible stories of leadership and survival ever told. Seriously, it's a story that sounds like it's straight out of a movie, pushing the very limits of what you think is humanly possible. Okay, let's dive right in.
It all starts with this number, 28. That's how many men set off, full of hope and ambition, ready to take on the last great wilderness on our planet.
And they would end up totally cut off from the world for this many days. 497 days. Just think about that. Stuck in the harshest, most unforgiving place on Earth.
But this is the number that makes this story legendary. The number of men who died. 0. Not a single life was lost. So the big question is, how on earth did they pull that off?
Well, the man in charge was the famous explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton, and his goal was, frankly, insane for the time. He wanted to be the very first person to walk across the entire continent of Antarctica.
And here's where you really see the plan versus the cold, hard reality. The dream was this grand 2,900-kilometer trek that should have taken about 4 months. The reality? It turned into a nearly 500-day battle for survival and one of the most unbelievable rescue missions in history.
Everything went wrong in the Weddell Sea. Their ship, which had the perfect name, the Endurance, sailed into a sea of pack ice, and it just never sailed out. It became a trap.
You have to understand, this wasn't some quick disaster. It was a slow, grinding nightmare. In January 1915, they got stuck, and for 9 long months, the ice just held them there, squeezing tighter and tighter, until, finally, the pressure was too much. It started to splinter the ship. By November, all they could do was stand on the ice and watch their only connection to the world get swallowed by the sea.
And here's the really crazy part. They weren't just stuck in one place. The huge sheet of ice they were on was drifting. It was like a moving prison, and it was carrying them further and further away from land and any hope of rescue.
Once the ship was gone, the hopelessness of their situation really started to sink in. One of the crewmen, Tom McClure, said what everyone was probably thinking. Can you imagine? No ship, no radio, thousands of miles from anyone, just gone.
So, what do you do when your ship sinks in the middle of a frozen ocean? Well, the 28 men built a makeshift camp right there on the drifting ice. Their new home was a floating piece of ice in a completely unpredictable sea.
And this is where Shackleton's leadership was just pure genius. He knew the biggest threat wasn't the cold, it was despair. So he made rules. He set up strict daily routines to create a sense of normalcy. Every single man had a job to do, no exceptions. This kept them busy and feeling useful. Food was rationed with absolute fairness. But his main focus? Morale. He organized games, sing-alongs, anything to keep their spirits up. He knew that their will to survive was the one thing that would actually save them.
After months of this, their ice floes started to crack and break apart. So Shackleton makes the decision that sounds like complete and utter madness. He, along with 5 of his men, would take a tiny 22-foot lifeboat and try to sail 800 miles across the most dangerous ocean in the world to find help.
Okay, so they finally make it to solid ground on a place called Elephant Island. This is where the other 22 men would have to wait. Now, look at Shackleton's options. The closer routes meant sailing straight into the Drake Passage, a notorious ship graveyard. So he picks the longest route, South Georgia, betting everything on the hope that the winds and currents would be in their favor. It was a huge gamble.
I mean, you just can't make this up. This journey, it's the stuff of legends. For 16 days, 6 guys in a tiny boat faced hurricane-force winds and waves the size of buildings. They were soaking wet in freezing water, barely slept, and had to navigate with a sextant, which only worked when they could actually see the sun. And against all odds, they land on South Georgia. But of course, it's not over. Not even close. They landed on the wrong side of the island, the uninhabited side. Their boat was way too beat up to survive a trip around the coast. The only option left was to do something no one had ever done before: cross the island's unmapped, ice-covered mountain range on foot. After 36 non-stop hours of hiking with basically no gear, Shackleton and 2 others literally staggered into a whaling station. They looked like ghosts. But think about this. After everything he'd just been through, his very first thought wasn't about a hot meal or a bed. It was about the 22 men he'd left behind.
But getting back to them was a whole other ordeal. 3 times he tried to borrow a ship and rescue his crew, and 3 times the thick winter ice forced him to turn back.
For over 3 months, he fought to get back to them, just absolutely refusing to give up.
And what about the guys waiting on Elephant Island? For over 4 months, they lived under 2 overturned lifeboats, just trying to survive. Their leader, Frank Wild, kept them going with the same routine every single morning. He would tell them, "Pack your things, boys. The boss may come today." That's just incredible faith.
Then, on August 30th, 1916, on the 4th attempt, a ship finally broke through the ice. It was Shackleton. And as he counted the men on the shore, he saw them all 22 of them, alive. Every single man from that original crew of 28 was saved.
And here's an amazing final chapter to the story. Just recently, in 2022, explorers actually found the wreck of the Endurance, and it was sitting perfectly upright on the ocean floor, almost perfectly preserved by the freezing water, a silent monument to this unbelievable journey. You know, if you think about it, the expedition was a complete failure. They never crossed Antarctica. But the story of the Endurance isn't about failure at all. It's about what happens when you have to redefine success, when the goal isn't exploration anymore, but just getting everyone home alive. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the real limits of what we can endure?